Hi, everybody. My name is George Worthington. I'm the Dementia Services Director with the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. And part of my job is to do public education and help raise awareness about dementia and brain health. And this is something we've learned an awful lot about in the last 10 years or so. I'm sure that not many of you had heard of brain health, maybe not even before you saw the notice for the webinar. But I'm sure you've all heard of heart health, and I'm going to be talking about how a healthy heart is linked to a healthy brain. I'm going to share some kind of overview of dementia and brain health in Virginia, and then I'm going to talk about some studies that helped inform what we know today and that provide evidence behind the recommendations and suggestions I'm going to give you. Then I'm going to talk about 9 big brain health pillars and things that you can do, and talk about how even small changes can make a big impact on your dementia risk and also your general brain health. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so why brain health matters. Uh, Brain health, well, everybody's got a brain. And of course, your brain controls everything you do. So keeping a healthy brain is good for you in general. It also helps you age better. And it can help uh, reduce your risks of developing dementia and maybe even prevent dementias that might otherwise have occurred. So we know that dementia is not a normal part of aging. It's caused by diseases of the brain. And dementia itself, it's not a disease. It's actually what we call a syndrome. It's a collection of symptoms that you might associate with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. So things like memory loss, changes in judgment, confusion, changes in personality, changes in perception also can be a symptom of dementia. And those symptoms are caused by many different diseases. Some of those are treatable and reversible, but the big ones that we think about, like Alzheimer's disease or vascular dementia or frontotemporal dementia, unfortunately, these are as yet not. There's no effective treatment that stops the disease process, and there's no cure at this point. In Virginia, there are over 160,000 people living with Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia. And uh, every year, the Virginia Department of Health conducts a survey called the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. And every 2 years, we ask about cognitive health. So the infographic on the right of your screen showing is from that data, the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. So that showed in the most recent data, which is from 2024, that 1 in 6 Virginians, so that's nearly 15%, over the age of 45 are experiencing thinking or memory problems that they feel are getting worse. So not all these people will have dementia, of course, but clearly they're worried about it. And one concerning thing is that about half of those people haven't talked to their doctor about it. And as I mentioned, some of the causes of dementia are treatable and reversible. So if you notice some changes in memory or thinking in yourself or others that you know, encourage people to talk to their doctor about it, because there might be something easy to treat. So dementia itself, I've talked about, it's that syndrome. So we like to think about it as an umbrella term that comprises those symptoms, the memory loss, changes in thinking or judgment or personality. And as I mentioned, it's caused by diseases like Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia, and vascular dementia. When these symptoms start to interfere with daily life and independence, so being able to do things like cook meals or manage your finances or get dressed, that is when it becomes dementia. So if you're having these changes or somebody's having these changes, but they're not affecting their daily life, they're still able to do all their activities of daily living and function effectively, then we call that mild cognitive impairment. So aging versus dementia, as I mentioned, dementia is not a normal part of aging. It's caused by these diseases. But we're all experiencing some changes in our cognition or cognitive decline. We're seeing some gradual cognitive decline. In fact, some of our thinking processes peak at about age 25. So if you're over 25, you're seeing some kind of gradual decline in your memory or thinking skills. Um, as you get older, uh, that decline continues, and you might notice that you're having trouble finding words. You might forget things from time to time, like somebody's name or an appointment, or you might have trouble just getting a word out, that tip of the tongue syndrome. And that's all very normal, although sometimes people get worried about it. But if you're seeing things like that and they're happening more and more frequently, and then getting a little bit more severe and starting to impact your life, then that might be something that's a concern, and you should talk to your healthcare professional. And with dementia, you're seeing much more severe changes in thinking or cognition. So, memory loss that disrupts daily life, confusion with time or place, or difficulty managing tasks. So, one way of thinking about this might be that if you're forgetting somebody's name when you see them on the street, that's just kind of normal. But if you're looking at something like a fork or a key and you're not quite sure what it's used for, that's definitely something that you'd want to get checked out. So I'm going to talk about three studies that have really informed our knowledge about brain health. And I forgot to say at the beginning, if you've got questions, please pop them in the chat or in the Q&A. Maybe the Q&A will be easier. We'll be able to see those better. Kesley's going to be monitoring that. And I will try and answer your questions at the end. Hopefully we'll have a few minutes to do that. So these three studies really helped shift our thinking on brain health and started us talking about it, and has changed policy and informed programs that help support people's brain health and hopefully help reduce their risks of developing dementias. So the first key study here was called the FINGER study that reported out in 2011, so about 15 years ago. It's called FINGER because it happened in Finland. It was the Finnish geriatric study. And it was the first big study that showed that lifestyle interventions, and specifically exercise and changes in diet and monitoring your cardiovascular health, could improve your brain health. The next study here is called the Sprint Mind study, and I cannot remember what that stands for. It reported out in 2015, and it was looking directly at the links between high blood pressure and dementia risk. And what they found, so what they were doing was they had a control group that was seeing treatment as normal, and all the participants had documented high blood pressure. The treatment group had aggressive management of their high blood pressure to get it down below 120 systolic, which is a little bit more than maybe most doctors would think is necessary. But what they saw was that the group that was having that aggressive treatment had a much lower transition to dementia than the control group. And in fact, so much lower that they actually had to stop the study early because it wasn't ethical to deny that treatment to the control group. So it takes time for these findings to translate into actual practice, but we're starting to see some changes at the clinical level that should help people with high blood pressure have better management of that to help lower their dementia risk. And then the next study, the US Pointer study, this reported out last year, and it is the largest study looking at lifestyle interventions and their impact on brain health and dementia to date. So this was a 2-year study. People were enrolled for 2 years. And again, there was a control group and a intervention group. So the control group got some information about imp- information about exercising and diet and nutrition and how to look after their health in ways that may support their brain health. Um, the intervention group got a much more structured intervention. So they were asked to do 30 to 35 minutes of moderate to intense aerobic activity 4 times a week, as well as strength and flexibility exercises twice a week. So a lot of exercise. Um, they were also asked to do computer-based brain training for 30 minutes 3 times a week, plus regular engagement in other intellectually challenging and social activities to keep their brain engaged. They also had health monitoring, so regular check-ins with healthcare professionals on blood pressure, weight, and also doing lab results. And they would get coaching around that to help improve their outcomes. And then finally, the nutrition pillar, they were asked to stick to what's called the MIND diet. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But it's a diet that's been shown to support brain health. And the good news was that both groups, both the control group and the intervention group, saw improvements in their cognition over the 2-year period. And the but the group that was getting the structured intervention saw a bigger improvement. Uh, it did show that these kinds of lifestyle interventions can help to protect thinking and memory from the normal decline that comes with aging, at least over the 2-year period of the study. And the takeaway from these 3 studies is that lifestyle interventions can work, and also that brain health can be protected at any age. So this is the US pointer recipe that so I just talked about this. I'm going to drop a PDF in the chat when I'm done with the presentation that you can download. The Alzheimer's Association has also built what's called a brain health habit builder based on the results from the pointer study. And so what that is, you can go to their website and you can build your own personalized brain health plan that can help you change some lifestyle, make some lifestyle changes and build some good habits for your brain health. And I'll put the link for that in the chat as well. So the 3 big takeaways from these studies: lifestyle matters, risk can be reduced. So these lifestyle changes can actually impact your risk of developing dementia and slow cognitive changes. And it's never too late to start. So while it's better to do many of these things earlier in life, even starting later in life can make a big difference. So I also wanted to throw in some information for caregivers, particularly. So maybe some of you are caregivers, or your friends and family are caring for somebody, not necessarily living with dementia, but caregivers of folks for any condition are experiencing greater stress and often are putting their loved ones' healthcare first and maybe not looking after their own health so much. But it's really important for caregivers to be looking after themselves, not only for their brain health, but for their health in general. Caregivers' self-care, looking after themselves, can help improve their ability to continue providing care for their loved one. So these lifestyle kind of changes, small changes that people can make, can help people manage their stress and mental health, can enhance their caregiving abilities. It can slow any cognitive decline that might make it more difficult to provide care for their loved one, and improve their overall well-being, as well as promoting positive relationships with their loved one and others around them. So now we're going to get into the actual risk factors for dementia and things, and look at some things that you can do yourselves. So brain health, as I said, this was something that we didn't really talk much about, but we're starting to talk about more and more. There's a medical journal called the Lancet report from the UK that every 2 or 3 years they've been publishing quite comprehensive reports on dementia risk. The first one came out in 2019, so about 7 years ago. Uh, and they had identified 9 risk factors for dementia that uh, had quite strong evidence base. So all of these risk factors listed in this table have a very strong evidence base. And those first 9 factors, they're still included in this table. And they thought that if all of those 9 factors were addressed at a population level globally, we could reduce the numbers of people developing dementia by about a third. So that's pretty huge. Just imagine if there were a third less people living with dementia right now. There's about 7 million people in America with dementia, so that would knock it down to 4 nearly. So that's quite a it would make quite a difference. Um, Over the years, they've identified a few more risk factors, again with strong evidence base. And they group these by when in life that the evidence shows them to be most important. So, and they shift. So between the second report and the current report, which came out 2 years ago, there was a lot of change. So many of these risk factors that you see in midlife were actually shown in later life in the previous report, but they moved them earlier in life because more research came out showing that the sooner you tried to do something about these risk factors, the better. So you can see that they are spread out over the course of life. There's now 14 risk factors that they've identified. And if all of these 14 were addressed at a population level, that could reduce the numbers of people developing dementia by 45%, so nearly half. That is just huge. So while everybody's individual risk profile is going to look quite different, these percentages here are the population level numbers. So you can see that early in life, there's just one risk factor that we can do something about, and that's education. So the more education you have, the better. It builds what's called cognitive reserve, and that can help slow any cognitive changes that happen over the lifespan. So the more education you have, uh, the lower the prevalence of dementia. There's a data report that comes out I'm not sure if it's every year or every 2 years, called NHATS, the National Health and Aging Trends Survey, I think. Um, and it breaks down dementia prevalence by many demographic factors like age and race and education. And just as an example, in the most recent year was 2022 that I have, folks with a high school, less than a high school education had a prevalence of dementia of 20.3%. For those with a graduate degree, it was only 3.3%. So education clearly makes a huge difference. And of course, there may be confounds. So people with more education might be looking after their health better generally, things like that. So there are other things as well, but education does make a difference. In midlife, about there's 10 risk factors that we should think about addressing. And again, if we addressed all of those in midlife, we might reduce the number of people developing dementia by 30%. Hearing loss and high cholesterol among the most important ones to address. And I'm going to talk about each of those in a bit. But you can see quite a number of these risk factors are related to heart health. So high cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, and smoking, all related to your heart health, as well as obesity and physical exercise. The other 55% of your risk for dementia, so those are things that we typically can't change ourselves. So that would be things like your age. So age is your biggest risk factor for dementia. As we get older, our risk of dementia increases. Doesn't mean we're going to get it, but it does increase. And then there are some genetic factors as well, and probably some other things that we haven't quite discovered yet. That affect our risks of developing Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Sorry. So let's see. Okay. So the big nine for brain health. Uh, there were 14 risk factors in that table. I'm going to combine a few of them and talk about them as one. And there's a couple of other ones that weren't on that table that I'm going to talk about as well, and I'll explain why they weren't on the table. So heart health. So this again combines a few of those risk factors. So high cholesterol, high blood pressure, um, smoking, diabetes. Uh, Basically, the message we've learned is that what's good for your heart is good for your brain. And there are very good reasons for this. So your brain it's about 5% of your body weight, but it is very energy hungry. It consumes about 20% of all the energy and oxygen that you take in. So just 5% of your body weight using 20% of your energy. And the oxygen and glucose that your brain needs is gets to it through the bloodstream. So if your blood cells are having trouble getting to your brain and carrying that glucose and oxygen to your brain's going to suffer. So thinking about what we know, some very clear links come because of vascular dementia. So that this is a type of dementia that's caused by heart disease or problems with your blood flow and getting those nutrients and oxygen to the brain. So what happens with vascular dementia is that you might have a series of small, tiny strokes, which we call TIAs, or transient ischemic attacks. These are sort of where a small blood vessel might get blocked, and so it stops delivering the nutrients and oxygen that the brain cells around it need, and so those brain cells die. Many of the cells in our brain don't regenerate, unlike most of our cells, and most of the cells in our bodies do regenerate, but many of your neurons do not. And so when they die, they get flushed out of the brain, and your brain starts to shrink as a result. Those TIAs, you probably wouldn't notice them if you had one, uh, but they are cumulative. They build up over time, and as heart disease worsens, it might affect more areas of the brain. And this is what you see with vascular dementia. You might also see the impact of a major stroke that causes brain damage. So clearly, anything that we can do that's going to help maintain our heart health and the blood flow to your brain is going to be good. So controlling blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, stopping smoking, exercising, many of these things are interrelated. Not only are they good for your brain, but they're good for your heart and vice versa. So, okay, so heart health is an obvious one. Nutrition. So, one of the four pillars of the Pointer study was the mind diet. And nutrition, obviously, we know about looking after our diet to support our heart health and physical health generally, but our nutrition also helps support our brain health. So the brain needs, particular types of nutrients, and it can get those from better from some diets than from others. Now, the mind diet is specifically well, it was created to help support brain health directly and to help reduce people's risks of dementia. It stands for the Mediterranean. So, probably many of you have heard of the Mediterranean diet. You might not have heard of the MIND diet yet, but it's becoming increasingly well known. So, it stands for Mediterranean dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So, basically, we're going to combine two diets, the Mediterranean and DASH. You may have heard of the DASH diet. That stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. That's a diet that specifically helps you reduce blood pressure. And so we know from the SPRINT Mind study that high blood pressure has a direct link to dementia risk. So if we are looking after or reducing our blood pressure, that's going to be good for our brain health and lower our dementia risk. So combining those two diets should have a really positive impact on your brain health. And so that's what they used in the Pointer study. It's not a very prescriptive diet at this point. The recommendations are to eat more of things like green leafy vegetables, berries, nuts, whole grains, fish, olive oil, um, beans, and poultry. I've got fish there twice, but um, fish, very good for you. So you can find out more about the Mind Diet online. But those are the main ingredients to a good healthy diet according to this plan. Then you want to limit 5 things. So red meat, fried food, sweets, butter and margarine, cheese, pastries, and sweets. I've got sweets on there twice as well. But again, these are the things that we kind of know are not so great for us, but it doesn't say don't eat these. It just says limit them. So we're human, you might enjoy a steak or a croissant or something like that from time to time. But if you're eating them regularly, you might want to think about cutting down the number of serves you have a week. So instead of maybe having a donut every day, you might cut it down to just 2 or 3 times a week. So something like that. Those small changes, again, can have a big impact. So I encourage you to have a look online for information about the Mind Diet and maybe think about making some small changes to your own nutrition. Oops. So exercise is the next pillar of brain health. So again, this was one of the 4 lifestyle areas that the Pointer study looked at. It used, as I said, it had 30 to 35 minutes of moderate to intense aerobic activity, which is a little bit less than the federal guidelines of 150 minutes of moderate activity a week. But that seemed to have an impact. And again, having a mix of aerobic strength and balance activities is really important. You don't want to just do aerobic activity and not do the other two. Strength and balance and flexibility, really important as well in helping maintain muscle fitness and good for your heart, and through that, good for your brain. I often get asked, what should I do? Like, what's the best, excuse me, what's the best exercise that I should be doing to protect my brain? And it's really something that you enjoy. If you don't enjoy doing it, you're not gonna do it, and so that's not gonna have any benefit. Uh, for me, if my doctor told me, George, you should be swimming laps 3 times a week, that would be the best thing for you, I would say, great. And then I would never do it because I really don't enjoy swimming laps. But I do enjoy walking and sort of activities like that, hiking, all that kind of thing. And that's good for you too. So choose something you enjoy. And again, you can think about making small changes. So if you don't get much exercise now, maybe take a little walk at lunchtime, or have a little walk in the evening with some friends. You can if you do activities with other people, you're getting social engagement as well, which is another risk factor. So you can knock off multiple. Well, you can support your brain in multiple ways by doing exercise with other people. So sleep is so this is a factor that was not in that table that I showed you from the Lancet Commission. And the reason is that sleep is really hard to study. So we don't have a lot of great evidence for the links between sleep and dementia. But we know quite a bit about sleep and the importance of sleep for your brain, in terms of maintaining your kind of day-to-day cognitive health, and the impact that a lack of sleep can have on your memory and thinking skills. So while the evidence base wasn't strong enough for the Lancet to include it as a risk factor that we could potentially modify, there is some evidence to show that people who are getting more than 7 hours of sleep a night have a lower dementia risk than people who are getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night. So, there's lots of information available about good sleep habits. You might have heard of sleep hygiene, which is what the psychologists call it. Um, but there are things like going to bed at the same time every night, getting up at the same time, getting that routine can help improve your sleep quality. We know that when you're asleep, your brain is not really asleep. There's lots of things happening, and so sleep is an important time for your brain just generally. One thing that's happening is that it's clearing out the wastes that build up during the day. So as your brain is processing the oxygen and glucose that it needs, it the cells create waste products, and those get whisked away uh, by by um, by by various cells, and a lot of that happens while you're sleeping. You also probably know that you dream at night, and that's mostly, but not completely, during a period of sleep called REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement sleep. If you lift somebody's eyelid during REM sleep, you'll see that their pupils are going back and forth really quickly, and that indicates that they're dreaming. And the dreams we think are associated with laying down the memories that you've made during that day or in recent days, as well as consolidating any learning that may have occurred. So as you learn, as you build memories, your neurons are making new connections between each other, and building those connections is really important for your brain health. So the more connected your neurons are with each other, the stronger your cognitive health. Um, you probably know, and you may have experienced this. I know I did when I was in college. Pulling an all-nighter was definitely not a good idea because my attention span really suffered. Trying to retrieve information was harder, and it didn't. That extra studying I was doing, it didn't really sink in. Whereas if I had studied a bit less and got a good night's sleep, I may have perform better on the exam the next day. So it's pretty clear that sleep has a big impact on your brain health. And then longer term, we think it has an impact on your risk for dementia. So this is another risk factor that wasn't on the table, and for pretty much the same reasons. It's hard to study. So with sleep, when you're doing a sleep study, you're going to be typically either in a lab and wired up to a lot of machines, or you're at home and you're still wired up to some smaller machines, but it doesn't feel very natural. It's very hard to study naturalistic sleep. With stress, it's kind of similar but different. Uh, to study stress, you have to put people into stressful situations. And while there were some really awful studies in psychology back in the early 20th century, uh, there was the outcry from those studies forced a change in the laws surrounding human subjects research. So we can't put people into stressful situations and study them. So it's hard to get good quality data on the impact of stress on your memory and thinking skills and brain health generally. But there is some evidence that shows that chronic stress, so that chronic when you're stressed, your body releases hormones like cortisol. And if you're chronically stressed, if you're experiencing stress that just goes on for hours or days at a time, that cortisol builds up, and we think it's associated with increased inflammation, not in various tissues, including the brain. And that increased inflammation seems to be associated with Alzheimer's disease. It's not absolutely set in stone that that's happening, but it does seem to be associated with Alzheimer's disease. So reducing chronic stress can help improve your memory. It can also help potentially reduce your risk of dementia over the longer term. And if you think about it, it makes sense. So some of those symptoms that I talked about, like having trouble finding words or forgetting people's names, those get worse if you're stressed. So I know I'm pretty terrible with people's names. It takes me several times to meet somebody before I really embed their name in my memory. But I can get quite stressed about it. So if I'm seeing somebody who I know I should know their name, then I'm putting this pressure on myself. I'm getting a little stressed, and that's going to make it even harder to remember their name. So you can imagine that if you're experiencing that kind of stress chronically, it's going to be much harder. So there are things that you can do. Again, you can make some small changes, even that can have a big difference. So things like mindfulness practices, you can find a ton of information. There's lots of apps around mindfulness that are things like guided meditations and or things like breathing exercises that are really great for helping reduce stress, and they can have a very quick impact on you. Relaxation techniques, again, you can find many on the web, and social support. So sometimes people are stressed because of social situations they're in. So seeking help for those can be helpful for your stress levels. Uh, so some things like just counting your breathing for just even a minute or two. So counting slowly, breathing 1, 2, 3, 4 out, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 in, that kind of thing. Doing that for a minute or two can actually help reduce your stress. So small changes, big impact. Social connection. So while this was not part of the Pointer study, there has been a lot of research around social isolation, particularly since the pandemic, when we had this huge involuntary uh, in, involuntary experiment in social isolation. So we were all forced to cut links. It was hard to see people in person, and that had an impact on people's mental health. And there is evidence to show that people who have a richer social life life can can that's associated with better brain health and a reduced risk of dementia. So I've got here larger social networks protect brain health. Now that doesn't mean having 500 friends on Facebook is better than having 200 friends on Facebook. Um, what this means is having quality social networks. So people that you see or people that you talk to on a regular basis, that you're interacting with, not necessarily online, but over the phone or Zoom or in person, even better. Staying engaged with family, friends, and community can have a big difference on people's mental health generally, but also on their long-term cognitive health. So again, the evidence isn't well, the evidence is strong, and social isolation and loneliness are highly associated with a higher dementia risk. So making sure that you're maintaining social engagement and doing things with other people, again, this is where I love how these all fit together. So if you have a meal with somebody and you're eating from the mind diet and you're having a conversation that's impacting two of these pillars of brain health at the same time, as well as probably being rather enjoyable. So hearing loss. Now, this was the one that was one of the most important on that table that I showed you from the Lancet Commission. So if we addressed hearing loss at a population level globally, just hearing loss, we might cut the numbers of people developing dementia by 7%. That's quite a large number for just one thing. Um, as a result, there's been a lot of study into the impact of hearing loss on dementia and cognitive health generally. And it's it's very clearly linked to higher dementia risk. So, and this is untreated hearing loss. So people who are having trouble hearing, think about why that might be impacting their cognitive health. So one thing is that they have trouble hearing what's going on around them. So they're not necessarily understanding their environment as well as people who are hearing well. The so our brains, what they're doing all the time is they're taking information in from the world around us through our eyes, through our ears, through our nose, fingers, through taste as well. And our brain puts all that information together and makes a picture of the world. So if it's missing information through any of those modalities, whether it's hearing or vision, or even sense of taste can impact your your feeling of hunger and satiety as well. So, but hearing and vision are really the big ones. So if you're not hearing what's going on around you, you're going to have trouble maybe navigating in your environment, but you're also going to have a lot of trouble participating socially. So you're not going to hear people as well. You're not going to be able to participate in conversations, um, all of which suggests that having hearing aids is going to be really important for your brain health. I'm going to use my mother as an example. She's 94 and she has hearing loss. She does have hearing aids, but she doesn't really love to wear them. And so almost always the first thing I say to her is, "Have you got your hearing aids in?" And I'm getting pleasantly surprised because more recently she's been wearing them. She always has them in. But a year or two ago, that was not the case. And so she was having a lot of trouble participating socially. She would go out to dinner with some friends and she really wasn't participating in the conversation. But now she's much more engaged, and I think it has made an impact on her cognitive health. Um, there was a study recently that Johns Hopkins conducted that was looking explicitly at the link between hearing loss and dementia. And I was hoping it was going to be very clear that wearing hearing aids made a difference, but it had nuanced results. So people who had a genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's disease had more of an improvement from wearing the hearing aids than did people who didn't have that gene, or that genetic profile. So it wasn't really strong enough to suggest that Medicare should be covering hearing aids for everybody, although they should, I think. But it wasn't the kind of definitive result that we had hoped for. Still, hearing loss does impact your risk of dementia. Finally, head trauma. So head trauma, this is, while exercise is maybe one of the biggest in general in terms of supporting your brain health, head trauma is really closely linked to higher risk of dementia. So one serious brain injury, that's when you lose consciousness for more than 24 hours, one serious brain injury in your life can raise your odds of developing dementia by 4.5 times. So that's pretty significant. Just one moderate brain injury which is losing consciousness from 12 to 24 hours, can raise your risks by 2.5 times. Again, pretty significant. Head trauma is cumulative. I'm sure you've seen stories about the impact of head injuries on football players and even soccer players. So it's real. And we want to do everything we can to protect our brain from having that kind of traumatic accident. So car accidents and falls are the biggest causes of head trauma. But any activity can cause well, not any activity, but many activities can cause brain injuries. So we want to take precautions. So wear your seatbelt, wear a helmet if you're biking. If you are concerned about your balance, maybe take a falls prevention class, learn how to better reduce your risks of falls. Falls are the biggest cause of head injury in older adults. So if we can reduce their chances of falling, we're going to help reduce their risks of developing dementia. So, a little brain health checklist. You want to manage your blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes. For heart health, you want to eat a brain healthy diet, so something like the Mediterranean or Mind diet. You want to move your body daily, so even just a short walk can help make a big difference. You want to get a good night's sleep. So again, roughly sleeping, 7 hours or more is good. You want to reduce your stress levels. You want to stay socially active, and you want to protect your hearing and avoid head injuries. So, just how thinking about caregivers specifically, how can caregivers, and these are not just for caregivers, of course, but I'm thinking of caregivers as people who are typically, very time poor, and trying to add even one new thing can be really hard to consider. So here's some ideas for kind of easy 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 ways of maybe having an impact on these pillars of brain health. So the one you can see down there, brain challenge. I think maybe I skipped over that slide, but challenging your brain is another of the brain health pillars of the Pointer study. And the the thinking there is that, again, helping support your brain build new connections between the brain cells is really important. And so one way of doing that is to challenge your brain. So thinking about playing strategic games like chess, bridge, can really help challenge your brain. There are so the Pointer study used a particular brain game that's available online. I think there is a fee involved, but you can find that on the Pointer Study website. Uh, and that has evidence to show that it works. There are lots of apps and things that say they're going to build your brain health or prevent you from getting dementia, and a lot of those you really want to take those with a grain of salt. They probably don't have that actual evidence base behind them, but you do want to try to challenge yourself. So reading something where you have to look up a word every now and again is much better than reading something that's really easy and you don't even have to think about it as you're reading. So try and think about ways of challenging your brain. One way that people often mention is learn a new language. If you ever try to learn a new language and you're over 20, it's really hard. Um, However, just that activity, that trying to learn or going through the process of learning new words and saying things in different languages, even if you don't retain it over the longer term, can really help support your cognition. So these are just a few resources that are available in Virginia um, around brain health and dementia prevention. So Dementia Capable Virginia, that's the website that's supported by DARS Dementia Services. It is you can find it on dementiacapablevirginia.org. It's a it's a fairly well, it's meant to be a place where people can start. So if you don't know anything about dementia, or you're needing to learn a bit more, you'd like to know about some services or supports that are available, this is a great place to start. Healthy Brain Virginia. So the Virginia Department of Health currently is an awardee of a CDC grant called BOLD. It stands for Building Our Largest Dementia Infrastructure Grant. This is all about getting brain health information into public health. So thinking about if there's a anti-smoking campaign or a smoking cessation campaign, that we include information about why that's important for your cognitive health as well as your heart. So you can learn more about brain health on the Healthy Brain Virginia website. And then finally, the Alzheimer's Association, their website has lots of great information. Again, I'm going to drop the pointers, the Brain Health Habit Builder and the Pointer Study into the chat in a second. And they also have a 24/7 helpline, 800-272-3900, that you can call if you're wanting more information about Alzheimer's or other dementias, uh, and brain health. So 3 key takeaways for you today. You can make a difference yourself in your brain health, so you can protect your brain health through these lifestyle changes, and that even small changes can make potentially a big difference in your brain health, particularly over the longer term. So, the younger you are and the sooner you make these changes, the bigger of an impact it'll have on your brain health and dementia risk over your lifespan. And together we can support healthier aging in Virginia. You can share this information with your friends and family and colleagues. You can learn more yourself about what you can do to help improve your brain health. So that is all the information I have for you today. These are my details. You please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you have any more questions or are looking for help around dementia or dementia services. And the QR code will take you to the Dementia Capable Virginia website. So, okay, I'm gonna get to the questions now. First one: do microplastics affect brain health as the microplastics lodge in the brain? So yes, there is evidence that microplastics have a negative impact on your brain health. I wouldn't like to say how strong that connection is, but there is increasing evidence that microplastics are not good for you. So I wouldn't want to try and quantify those risks, but yeah. How to get good exercise with bad knees and back. So there are things that you can do like chair yoga and chair tai chi that are low impact that really anybody can do. So I would talk to your doctor always before starting a new exercise routine, but your doctor or a physical therapist would have lots of great ideas on how to get some more movement going, even if you have bad knees or back pain. What if the dreams are traumatic? So you mean like nightmares, I guess. So yeah, I really don't know the answer to that question, but I'm curious about the answer. So I'm gonna have a look after this. If you want to email me about that, then I'm happy to share what I learned. How do you feel about games on the phone that advertise you used to keep your mind active and lessens your choice of dementia? So I sort of answered that already, but yeah, many of these games say, "Oh, I'm a the ad for it will have somebody in a white coat saying, "I'm a neurologist and I play this every day, and I know it means that I will never get dementia." And yeah, I would not necessarily believe that. So it's kind of like supplements that advertise themselves as preventing dementia. You want it. So if you're interested in those, definitely talk to your doctor about them. But many of those brain games really what they do is they get you very good at one skill, like popping bubbles or something, but they don't generalize and they're not necessarily building new connections in your brain. But the one on the pointer study, uh, that does have evidence to show that it can help your brain health. I'm just looking for the um, document to drop in the chat. So there's one. And then the other one is the Brain Health Habit Builder and the pointer recipe. Okay, so there's 3 documents in the chat that you can download. And let's see the other questions coming in. So I'm not going to have time to answer all of these probably. Can dementia be hereditary? So there is a some genes that we know are associated with a higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. So your risks of developing Alzheimer's are higher if you have a first degree relative like a parent or a sibling that have had Alzheimer's disease. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but it does mean that your risks are higher. So yes, there is a hereditary to at least some dementias. Lewy body dementia, there doesn't seem to be, or we haven't found that genetic component yet. Is learning a new language a good brain challenge to prevent dementia. So I talked about that already. But yes, it is good even if you don't learn the language. Just the process of doing that is going to be challenging for your brain. Um, so will you please share the PDF presentation? So yes, I can actually put that in the chat. Um, so the slides are in the chat now. How does liver health impact dementia potential? So actually, I do not know of any connections directly between liver and dementia risk, liver health and dementia risk. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that one. Can bouts of anger or anxiety that are outside of a person's nature be associated with dementia? So the answer to that is yes. So that's kind of personality changes. If they come on really suddenly, it's probably something else. It could be delirium or some other physical cause, like a urinary tract infection, can cause those kinds of personality changes that come on rapidly. But if it's a slower, more gradual decline, and you're seeing this happen more and more frequently, that could be a symptom of dementia. Yeah. Is there early assessment to diagnose for dementia? If so, how do you qualify? Um, so you can always ask your doctor for a cognitive screen, and these are short, um, typically 5-minute tests that can help determine whether your cognition is, if there's changes happening in your cognition or not. It is good to do that early, and then you get a baseline, and you can ask your doctor for that every year. Typically, they don't start doing it for folks until they're 65 and older, which is when your dementia risk, well, when most people develop dementia. Um, do you have general information and methods of strengthening the anterior mid-cingulate cortex on a daily, weekly basis? Uh, I don't. So that's a little too specific. I don't know the answer to that, but I can certainly follow up with you if you want to shoot me an email. Um, so I want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. I know we're at 12:30. Hope this has been helpful and interesting for you, and that you've learned a few things that you can actually do in your daily lives to make a difference in your dementia risk. So have a great rest of your day. Think about your brain health, and yeah, see you later. Thanks.